All right, I think we've got most folks here. So welcome, everyone. I'm Carol Lombardi. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Experience and Wellbeing in the ILR School. And thanks for joining our session this afternoon. We know that there's lots of information coming about as we prepare to reopen in the fall. And so we wanted to give ILR students a chance to connect and ask questions. We hope to get to many of your questions this afternoon. So thanks for joining us. I want to introduce who we have with us this afternoon. So we'll just get started in a minute, but I do want to introduce those who are here with us. We have George Boyer, who is the Associate Dean for Academics here. He's got lots of information about the academic component. Kevin Harris is here, who is the Director of Student Services. Anu Lyons, who is the Director of Career Services, is here. Angela Canfield is here. She's our Director of Undergraduate Admissions. Bridget Beechler is here, and she runs our credit internship program and our Dublin program. And Tamara Ingram is with us this afternoon. She's our assistant director who works closely with our exchange and international programs. And so I'm going to pass it on to Dean Colvin, who's going to give some updates and share some information and tell you all about the work that's happening in ILR now. So Dean Colvin, would you like to get started?
Great. Thanks very much, Karen. It's really great to have everybody joining us today. As you can see, I'm joining you from my home office, as are many of our colleagues here, even the ones who appear outside that Zoom backgrounds. We're all still remotely working back here at ILR, which is part of us doing our efforts to keep our community safe. But I want to let you know that we've been hard at work this summer in getting ready for the fall semester, getting ready to reopen the campus. This is obviously an enormous task for us because we are looking at over 20,000 students coming back to our campus. And even before the students come back, we have thousands of employees who've got to get ready for coming back to work. Now, this has been a slow and gradual process. We've been following New York State guidelines. Governor Cuomo's announced a 4-phase plan for reopening the state that we've been following along. Higher education was one of the later phases, or phase 4 in the opening plan. Some people at Cornell are already back in their offices, particularly our colleagues over in the life sciences where they have lab animals and things like that, where they have to go in and directly work with equipment in their labs. There are some people back on campus, but many of us are still continuing to remote work. That's something that we can do at ILR particularly effectively with the kind of work we do. So we've been doing that to try and keep protecting our community and support the public health efforts that we know are super important. Our planning for opening up the campus has been an extensive one and complex. And I think that reflects the task that's before us. We know that this has been an incredibly disruptive event for our society that's caused enormous pain, losses to many people. We know people in our community who've lost loved ones to the pandemic. And so we're putting in every effort that we can to do our part in making sure that our operations are as safe as possible, and to make sure that you students, as you come back to campus, are coming into a safe environment to learn in. That's been a complicated planning process, and it's something that took a lot of thinking through how exactly this would work. I mean, one of the starting points to it was, I think, a realization that if we didn't do anything in terms of how we were going to deal with the coming semester, say we just said, okay, we're either just opening, students are coming back to campus without precautionary measures, or if we were to just announce, hey, we're going to do online education, but we didn't do anything to ensure the safety of the community, we would actually have significant problems arising. One thing we know is that there are already many students who've come back, living in their apartments in College Town, come back to the community. Even if we were just online, people will be coming back to the community. And if Students are in our community, we have a responsibility to them, and that's been an important principle for the university. We want to make sure that the students coming here are safe, and we want to make sure that the community, Ithaca, that we're based in, is safe. Cornell is the center of this community. It's the largest employer by far, and there's a large number of people who are going to be coming to Ithaca as we operate as a campus. So there's been a lot of planning going into how we're going to do this and taking advantage of some of the unique strengths that Cornell has. One of the really important parts of that is we are a great scientific university with one of the country's leading veterinary schools. And they have incredible diagnostic and testing equipment. What this allows us to do is to run an enormous number of tests, COVID-19 tests. You've probably read that this has been one of the challenges the country's faced is access to testing. And fortunately, you've seen in a number of locales around the country, people waiting to get tests and difficulty getting results. We have an advantage. The veterinary school has the diagnostic laboratory for New York State, and the equipment that's used to run the tests that they do is the same equipment that's used to run the COVID-19 tests. And there's permission being given from the FDA to use this on human subjects, human samples. That means that you can test people for COVID-19, run it on the machines on campus, and get the results right away, and do it in large numbers. We tested this out a couple of weeks ago. Many of us here, faculty and staff, went through a pilot testing effort. So that meant that they set up testing locales in Bartels. So, if you imagine going in for a basketball game, except instead you've got Cougar Medical Center setting up testing locations, and faculty and staff from ILR, from Human Ecology, and from CALS all went through and got tested. I went in one morning myself and got tested. They put the gigantic swab up my nose, swirled it around there, got the sample, and then sent it off for testing. Fortunately, it was negative. I did not have COVID, but it was important that we all put in our effort there to make sure that they're prepped for this system for the fall, so that when you come back as students to campus, we can do the same testing for you to ensure that the population coming in is free of COVID. And the plan is we're going to be testing everybody. All the students, all the faculty, all the staff are going to be on campus. Everybody coming into campus is going to be tested. And that's a really important part of the plan. It's really the center of it. It's population testing. The science says that's the best way to keep the community safe, is test the whole population, repeatedly test. If people test positive, then they can be isolated, quarantined. They can get the medical help that they need. That's really important, again, for keeping people's health. So this is a big undertaking, but it's something that we're going to be doing as a campus to ensure the safe operation in the fall. And that's really, in our feeling, the only way to do it responsibly, right, is if we can do this degree of assurance of the safety. So when you come back, you'll be going through this as well. I'll be going through it. My colleagues will as well, and we'll do it repeatedly. Hopefully, I understand by that point they're working on getting a mouth swab version, so you don't have the thing up your nose. But we'll see. The nose is not that bad. I've had it done. It really was not that unpleasant. I'm kind of ticklish. I was giggling when they were doing it. And I'm a kind of scaredy cat with needles. So, I think if I can handle it, probably most people should be okay on that. Another big part of coming back, though, is that we're going to make sure that we're socially distanced, something that everybody's been doing. If you go into the grocery stores today, there's lots of signage around to keep people separate. There's plastic shields at the checkouts. We've been doing that same kind of work around campus to make sure that the campus is ready for social distancing so that we're not overloading the number of people in enclosed spaces, right? Because again, the science tells us that's what you don't want. So there's going to be some big changes. The capacity of classrooms is going to be reduced. We want to have fewer people in classrooms so that we don't, again, break that kind of social distancing. That's going to look pretty different. There's going to be a lot of signage around stuff. The way that cafeterias are going to operate is going to be kind of different, right? Reservation times for eating in person, lots of grab and go takeout on campus, all kinds of things to make sure that the environment is as safe as it can possibly be. We're working on that in the IVES ILR facility to make sure that our space is ready for people to come back into. And there's going to be lots of signage up, giving lots of instructions around how that's going to work. So, you put that all together. That's a lot of work, but it's really important work. It's really important that we all do this together. And we're also going to be relying on you. So it's important that the student body collectively is supporting these efforts, right? That the student body takes ownership of it. In that basic stuff of making sure that we all follow the rules of wearing masks when we're inside buildings, or if outside, if we're not able to be socially distanced. That's really important, and it's going to rely on all of us together to be taking these efforts. And for those of you living off campus, when you're off campus, being responsible as well. There's something being developed called the Cornell Behavioral Compact. That's going to be a set of rules and commitments we're all going to follow, and you're all going to follow as students to support these efforts to keep our community safe. That's important for the campus community so that your fellow students are safe. That's incredibly important. Your faculty and staff, we're here to support you to keep them safe, and our broader community. We're in a small isolated community in upstate New York that has some advantages. I think we're going to be able to operate more safely because of that, because we can control the environment more, but it also brings with that great responsibility. The people in the community of Ithaca want to know that bringing back students is not something that's going to endanger their community. We've got responsibilities to the people in the community. Think about, the janitors who clean our buildings, or the dorms, right? They have family members, right? We don't want to put them at risk through what we are doing, right? So this is a call for all of us to be responsible, to do the things that I know so many of you are already doing to keep your own families safe. To make sure that your grandma isn't the one who we're reading about in the paper sadly lost to COVID-19, right? So it's a collective endeavor that we're all going to have to work on to make sure that we can operate safely. But I'm confident that you will do that, right? That you will step up. Cornellians have over the years, and I believe that you will as well. You'll have that same commitment too. Some of the things we're going to do, are going to be different, but I think are going to be some interesting innovations. We're working on putting tents up in the quads, the upper quad and the lower quad, outdoor space, little cover overhead, tables and chairs, and you'll be able to use that as outdoor space to hang out in, to meet people. Study groups can meet there. This is going to give us that kind of fresh air place to meet that the science says is the best thing to have, and it's going to expand our space. I think it's going to be really a useful tool that we'll be able to have in the fall. The fall is going to be kind of different, right? You're going to have a mix of online and in-person classes. The larger classes, we are going to have to be putting those online. The reality is we don't have enough classroom space with the social distancing to put all the classes in the regular spaces, right? So you think about some of our flat classrooms like 217, 219. Many of you may have taken classes there. Those typically hold about 70 students. With the reductions because of social distancing, those are going to be classrooms of maybe 15 students. 305, our gigantic auditorium that we can fit 300 in. Usually, that's where I can talk to the whole first year class coming in. I won't be able to do that because with social distancing, we'll only be able to fit about 50 people in that classroom, right? So the classrooms are going to be restricted for your safety. That's going to mean, though, that those larger classes will of necessity be online. The smaller ones, the sort of seminar classes, are the ones that are going to be more plausible to do in person. We're working right now on getting the class schedule ready for the fall. That's a complex task because we're having to completely redesign the class roster to respond to the changes that we need to make, right? So different kinds of scheduling. Pretty soon we're going to get it up. You'll be able to see which classes are going to be in person, which ones are going to be online. It's going to be a different looking schedule. But again, that's to make it work effectively. So you'll have that kind of mix of in-person and online classes there to choose from. Obviously, a different calendar is going to exist. We'll be starting a little later, September 2nd, and then running through to Thanksgiving, straight through, no breaks, and then we'll go home, finish off the term online, and then come back in February. Again, with the idea that we don't want people going away and then coming back, right? That's just a recipe for bringing infection back into the community. And so we want to keep everybody safe by structuring the term that way. So it's going to be a pretty different term. At the same point, right, this is the way in which we can have a campus community. We can have people come back, right? So that you'll have that opportunity to be with other students, to interact with professors, to get back on campus, right? And this is the steps we're going to take to be able to do that. Other stuff we've been working on. One thing that is a particularly important thing that President Pollock made an announcement about last week is steps that we're taking as a campus to address issues of racial injustice that have come to the fore in recent weeks following the tragic death of George Floyd and the concerns about police actions against Black Americans. And that is something that we as a campus are very concerned about. We're looking at what we can do to address these issues of racial injustice that have plagued our society for far too long. President Pollock's announced a set of measures that the university is taking. Obviously, these are long-term issues. They are not things that will be amenable to quick fixes, but they are things we have to keep working on. And President Pollock's indicated her commitment to this, and we are following that commitment. We are going to implement steps following the direction that she has announced for the university. Among the important steps, looking at how we address these issues in our curriculum. She's had a call for the Faculty Senate to develop a common course requirement around addressing issues of racial injustice. We're doing a curriculum review right now at the ILR school. We're going to be continuing that in the fall. We, for the last year, have been discussing increasing the diversity and inclusion elements in our curriculum, addressing that in a more substantial way in our curriculum. And we're going to continue that discussion in the fall as we develop a revised curriculum. And that's going to be a high priority for us. We're continuing to make efforts to develop greater diversity of our faculty and our faculty hiring. We've done a lot of faculty hiring the last couple of years. That's been one of the really important things that I've been working on as dean, and we've brought in a lot of new faculty that you're going to start to see new courses being brought in. It's the most diverse group of faculty that we've hired in our history, and they're bringing in new perspectives, new topics, addressing issues like diversity and inclusion, right? We're going to have new faculty who teach in that area, as well as other important areas. We're addressing a lot of new international areas. That's an important part of the curriculum. We are expanding what we're teaching in the course offerings that we're going to be offering to you. Look for that over the next year or two as you really see a bunch of interesting new courses being brought in by the new faculty. So, you know, it's a difficult time. There's a lot of challenges that we're facing as a university and as a society. But if I take a longer look, I'm optimistic about what we're doing. People are working really hard to get ready for you to come back to campus. We're putting a lot of preparation work, and we've got a good plan. We're going to have a very different semester and a very different year, but we are putting every effort to make this as good experience as we can make it for you. That's the top priority, and we're all really committed to delivering on that. So let me pause for a moment. I know we've got a number of questions that were sent in earlier. A number of you are putting in questions into the Q&A, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions, myself and my colleagues here. I'm going to turn it back to Kara to start passing along some questions. So what would people like to know about?
Thank you. Thanks. So yes, many people have already submitted questions and I've tried to organize those and we'll try to hit all of those topics. And in the meantime, I encourage folks to continue to put in the Q&A and we'll get to as many of these questions as possible. Many of the questions that came in were specifically about the core courses in the curriculum and maybe talking a little bit about how those might look different or how you expect those to look in the fall. And a question which I think you addressed, but I want to make sure that we hit this is, will required courses be online? So if you want to tackle those first.
Yeah, so that is one of the challenges, that many of our required courses are larger courses, and so by necessity, many of those will be online. We are working where we can to figure out ways to have in-person options for some required courses, but that's going to be limited. There are, large courses which it's just not possible physically to do it in the spaces. If you think of the 200 student intro or OB course, right? We can't do that safely in a classroom. We could do it in Schulkopf Auditorium, Schulkopf Stadium, but that will be about it. So that is going to be a limitation. But there are some types of required courses where there will be in-person versions. So sophomore writing seminars, those smaller seminars, a number of those will be offered in person. There's also your first year writing seminars as well. There's a large variety of those across campus. So through the night writing seminar, writing center. So again, there you'll see in-person options there. But I think one of the realities is that because of the size issue, it is going to be those larger introductory classes that are going to tend to be more often online. It's the seminars that are going to be more in person.
Great. So another question which is similar, but I want to make sure that we catch any nuance there. Do we have a sense of how many will be online versus in person? And what's, in addition to the size of the class, what determines if a course is decided to be online or in person?
Yeah, so it's by class size, but also faculty decisions on whether to teach in person or online. This has been a very controversial issue in universities around the country. There's been concerns, particularly from some faculty, older faculty, or faculty in high-risk health groups, that they're going to be forced by universities to teach in person, in situations where they don't feel safe. And for each person, there's different personal health circumstances that vary a lot. People vary in the risks. That's one of the realities of this disease. And it's taken a sad higher toll on segments of our society. So we need to recognize that. Cornell has taken a position that it's not going to force people to teach in person. It's going to give faculty the option there in recognition of this different situation, different faculty are going to be in. So we are going to see a mixture. I am anticipating that there will be significantly more online courses, but we're also working to ensure that each student has the ability to have some in-person courses as well. That's obviously going to vary depending on the courses that the student wants to take. If you have more flexibility as to what you take, you can search out the in-person options more. It's going to be harder for, if you have less flexibility around what you want to take. And it may be more difficult to get as many in-person courses if you've got more required courses in the early years. That's just that's a tricky reality that we're dealing with. Intro microeconomics or macroeconomics, those are courses economics are going to have to teach online, so that's going to limit things. So it will vary a little bit year to year. But one thing I've said to the faculty is, as we put together the roster, one of my priorities is that to try and find options for every student to be able to have in-person classes.
Can you talk a little bit about what discussion sections might look like if a student is engaging in those remotely?
Sure. So if they're engaging remotely, well, there's two kind of ways. right? So there's going to be the ones where the whole class is online and the discussion sections are online. That's going to be via Zoom, the way that we did in the spring term after everybody left campus, where we'll use the Canvas and Zoom tools like we're using today to do the discussion sections. One of the more complex things is that for in-person classes, we're going to have ability to access all of them remotely. And that's really important because there are students who aren't going to be able to be there in person. There are students who have health concerns themselves that we have to accommodate. That's really important. It's not just an age-based disease, which I think is sometimes falsely thought of. There are people of every age who have greater vulnerabilities to this disease, and so we need to provide options for those students. There may be students who get sick and have to be quarantined, right? So we need to have options for them. We have international students who are unable to get back to the United States because of inability to get visas, travel restrictions. So we need to provide options for them. And so what we're working on this summer is to get ready so that those students can access remotely courses that are being done in person. And that's something the faculty are planning on, and we'll be working with our technology services people to make sure that works effectively.
Great, thank you. Will the ILR class requirements be affected by the COVID-related campus changes?
The class requirements won't be affected. We'll be offering the classes that students need to be able to meet their curriculum requirements, right? And that's been an important principle, right? That we need to make sure that we have the courses students need to be able to graduate, to meet their kind of yearly requirements along the way. So we'll certainly be doing that. There won't be changes to the requirements. Certainly, there's going to be situations where we have to accommodate student needs and student situations, right? This happens every year that our committees examine student petitions and requests, right? And certainly we'll be listening to issues that arise that are affected by student situations. And COVID-19 is so unusual to anything we normally deal with that we're clearly going to have to take that into account in thinking about student requests. So if you do run into some issue that is arising because of the pandemic and how it's affecting you, please do talk to our student services staff. Kevin and his team, are there, and they're there to help you out. And please do contact them, if you have needs that we can help address.
Great. We addressed this issue, but I think it's important enough that maybe we would go back to it. If taking all classes remotely, is it possible to stay home, or are students required to live on campus regardless?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the simple answer is they're not required to. And we actually know that there will be students who will not be able to be on campus at all and will have to take all their classes remotely. Two groups immediately, those if there's students for health, say, reasons who need to be more isolated, they just may not be able to come to a campus situation, and international students who are not able to get to campus. So we are anticipating that there will be some students who need to do everything online, and we are prepared for that. So there is no requirement that students have to be physically on campus. We are giving students that choice, and we recognize people's health situations and concerns will vary, and we will accommodate that. I'd also mention, just on my last point, that the other student services that we have are going to be available online as well. That's part of the reason we have the whole team here, is because you can access our services online. So even if you're not physically able to come into campus, you can still access student services, career services, our admissions and international programs and credit internships, all these great services that we have. The people are able to offer them, our staff are offering them remotely. So we will be providing that service still.
Okay, I have a good one now.
Okay.
They're all good, but this one is particularly good. When will enrollment for classes be?
When will enrollment for classes be?
Yes.
The answer is, everybody's chuckling because the answer is I don't know the answer to that, because we are in the process of putting together the roster, and so the roster has to be finalized before we can start allowing people to enroll. Hopefully soon, right? I think is the answer that we're all hoping for. Hopefully in a few days, maybe not too long, we'll be able to open that up.
Yeah, we understand that those classes are being planned, and then of course that it'll take a little time to get that going, and then we'll get students enrolled just as soon as we possibly can.
Absolutely, and it's a double problem this year because we have to make sure that the timing works. You have to fit together all the courses time-wise, and we're going to have longer breaks between classes to again reduce the density of people going in and out. And then we got to fit into all these classrooms, right, that are now distance classrooms where we've got different classroom sizes available. So, unfortunately, it's a much more complex problem. We did this whole roster back in the spring, and now we just got to throw all that out and come up with a totally new roster to make this all work. So the registrar people are doing double duty this year.
How about faculty office hours? What will they look like?
They're going to be virtual. That is something that's important to again reduce the density of people, flow of people in and around the office areas. So we are going to be using virtual office hours. One of the things that we found in the spring is that virtual office hours actually work really well. A lot of the faculty reported much better participation and interaction in virtual office hours than they do in in-person office hours. And that's something that's, something for us to actually think about and learn from, that, maybe our in-person office hours aren't as accessible or friendly enough that we would like them to be. Maybe we think that they're work well, but actually it seems like we're actually getting better virtual office hour participation. Now, one thing that we will be able to do, as an additional possibility is, if you want to actually see the physical faculty member to interact with them, is we do want to be able to use this outdoor space for those kind of opportunities, so that faculty, if they want to talk to a student, can meet them outside in the quad, under the tents, and that provides another interaction opportunity as well. We are going to, though, have the regular office hours. We're not going to cut back office hours. We're not going to cut back class time. You're still going to get that full interaction time with the faculty, and that's a really important principle we're sticking to.
This question that I have next is about housing. So I might just ask it, and then I can provide a little bit of information. And Dean Colvin, if you want to chime in, we'll let you do that. If a student doesn't live on campus in the fall semester, will there be student housing available in the spring semester if they choose to do that? And I understand that that is based on the availability of the space. I'll also mention that next Wednesday, or is it the 22nd? No, it's this Wednesday. How time flies. This Wednesday, there is a forum that will be 5:30 in the afternoon, and there will be financial aid questions answered there, questions about testing and health, and some more specific information about move-in and housing. So I would encourage folks to attend that. Dean Colvin, I don't know if you have anything else to add in regards to that question.
Not so much on the housing, yeah. It's less my areas of expertise. Though I think I may be the only faculty member who at one point lived in a crappy apartment in College Town when I was a grad student. So I do have extra expertise as a faculty member on crappy College Town apartments.
So another question is about the classrooms and the cleaning schedule. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so that's something that we've been talking about. Obviously, the faculty are concerned about that too. The cleaning staff do a really great job, and they've really upped what they do, with the pandemic. So the classrooms are going to be regularly cleaned, like every day. They'll be cleaned. We're also going to put cleaning materials in the classrooms so that if somebody's in there, they're concerned and they want to spray, the sort of bleach cleaner around on surfaces, that they can do that. So we want to provide that as well in the classrooms. An additional thing we're going to do to increase the safety is have designated seating in the classrooms. So if you're an in-person class, you'll have a designated seat that you sit in every day that you're in class. And again, that's so that you don't have as many, you don't sit in the seat and think, oh, have there been like, 100 different people sitting in this seat, right? It's going to be the same, smaller set of people, again, to reduce down risk, right? We're going to do the mass testing to keep, an eye on the whole population, but we just want to take every extra little step that we can to reduce down risk. So that's going to be part of it as well.
Great. A question that came in earlier and has also been posted in our Q&A box is about the library.
Yeah.
Will they be open? What will that look like?
Yeah, so the library is going to be open. They are in the process of opening up the libraries. That's going to, as we go to the fall, those will be open. Catherwood will be open. They are going to change some of the way the space is used, just again to de-densify the space, right? We don't want a situation where everybody's kind of packed in the library and you feel uncomfortable going in to study in the library because there's just so many people and somebody right beside you. So there's going to be spacing out within the library. And I know the library staff is working on getting that all ready for when the students come back in. But yes, you will be able to use the library. They're going to have plans for accessing books and materials there, so that they'll be there for supporting that. I know they also do really good online support. So if you're working on a paper and you need help, you can get online support from the librarians, like in-person online.
Thank you. There's another question in regards to quarantine and moving into the residence. I think we can refer that to the meeting on Wednesday, or do you want to take a stab at that? Okay.
No, I think that's good. I mean, I do know that they are, they are putting in place a very careful plan and taking into account things like New York State's requirement that individuals from high-risk states or more prevalent COVID prevalent states are going to have to do additional quarantining when they come into New York State. So we have to follow that. It's a state law, but we are the university is putting in place planning for that.
And then there's a question that's come in about the behavioral compact and how will it be enforced?
Yeah, so that's there's been a fair bit of discussion there around campus on that. I think there's sort of different levels of kind of enforcement there. Some basic stuff is that we will be asking you to wear masks and follow the things in the behavioral compact. So so if I'm around ILR Ives and I see you without a mask on, I'm going to say, hey, put on your mask, right? That's going to be the one baseline of enforcement, and faculty and staff are going to ask people who aren't who don't have masks on to put on masks, right, to follow the rules there. It's also going to be important, though, that there be a social norm developed among students to follow the behavioral compact, right? We don't want to rely on kind of our enforcement mechanisms, people getting JA'd. We want people to follow the norms, and students establish norms for themselves, right? That's something that happens on a campus, and it's going to be your collective responsibility to do that, to engage in good behavior and to call out your friends if you see your friends behaving in a way that's not safe, right? You don't want to see your friends coughing in somebody else's face, right? That's really important. It's not I will say one thing. It's not going to primarily be a campus police function, right? That's being discussed. That's not the primary thing. Obviously, if there is significant safety risk situations. Campus police is responsible for campus safety, but that's not the primary way we're going to deal with this, right? It's going to be, like other campus behavioral norms.
Working through some of these questions. There's lots of them. I hope to hit as many as possible.
Excellent.
Will we still have the option to take all classes satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Pass, fail, which is satisfactory, unsatisfactory?
George, do you want to answer that one?
No. At the moment, we are going under rules that we're starting out. You all know what's happening from the beginning. And we are not going to a situation like last spring where you could choose courses as SU. Now, you do have the right to take a certain number of credits SU. And so you can do that, not in required courses, but you certainly can do that. But we are not planning on offering the SU option like it was offered last spring. Kevin, do you have anything to add on that?
George, I'll just add that, there are some classes that students, as you mentioned, just to add on what you said, there are some classes that students will choose to take that are offered with a pass-fail option in terms of the grading option. You could take it letter graded or pass-fail. If you choose to take the class pass-fail that way, that's fine. What I would always suggest is if you don't know how that's going to impact you in terms of your requirements with the curriculum, highly suggest you speak with one of the advisors in our office to make sure that that it's going to be, you're going to be able to use the course the way that you anticipate using it. As Professor Boyer mentioned, required courses, even if they were offered as with the pass-fail option, can't be taken with that option. They have to be taken for a letter grade. So that's why it's important for you to connect with us, with the advisors that can help you through the curriculum to make sure you know how that's going to impact, that decision would impact you if you take the course that way. And we're available to do that in many, many ways. We might hit that with some of the other questions, but I'll leave it at that for now.
There's some more questions about arriving in quarantine, and I'll refer those to the FAQs and the university page. But one of the questions here is, what happens if I test positive while I'm on campus? And I'll maybe ask either Dean Boyer or Dean Colvin to address how it relates to academic matters if a student is testing positive.
So one basic thing is, we are going to be having support for quarantining students any student who tests positive, right? So the university is setting up arrangements for that to keep the student safe and also well fed, right? Meals while they're quarantined. So that's important. It will depend a little bit on what the impact is on the student. So many people who test positive for COVID have mild or no symptoms. If that's the case, right, and we've put you up in a hotel room locally, you may be able to continue to take your classes just fine online. And that's part of the reason that we are putting in arrangements that even if you've got an in-person class, you'll be able to access it remotely, right? So to allow a student in that situation to continue on their studies as normal. If the student does run into a situation where they become more ill, then we'll have to, obviously accommodate that like we do other illnesses. This is actually something that occurs every term, that there are students who become ill during term, and that interrupts or affects their studies. And so we have different ways of kind of accommodating the student situation there. So we will have to assess if that happens. But for the student who's not seriously ill, unable to kind of continue on their studies, we are going to be set up for that.
So we have a question that's asking about the final exam period before Thanksgiving, and will there be final exams online after Thanksgiving? And what's the purpose of this?
Yeah, that confused me at first too, because they were called semifinals, and I thought, like, did you take the semifinal? If you did really well, you got to take the final, and if you did badly, you were knocked out or something. And apparently, it does not work like NHL playoffs, right? So my Canadian experience did not help me at all on that. The purpose of the semifinals is to allow a final to be done in person, in in a room, like you go into Barton and you write finals there. So that you can write them that way instead of having to do the final online. This is something that was not such a great experience in the spring. There's a lot of things that went really well in terms of online teaching in the spring. Administering exams was a problem. And there were issues with academic dishonesty issues with some online exams. That was a big problem, mostly in other college classes, not as much in ILR classes, but this has been a concern. And so the way the semester's been set up is to allow in-person exams to be done before Thanksgiving to deal with those issues. A number of faculty, I think you'll find, have redesigned their syllabi because of this new structure, so that essentially you do your final right before Thanksgiving, and then you do something else in the additional online period. Maybe that's when you do your paper during those additional 3 weeks. So there's been some restructuring of syllabi to work with this new arrangement. Faculty are working really hard this summer, getting ready for this hybrid semester. Right, those who are teaching online are going to have to do, quite a bit of different things, and they're working on that. I think Professor Boyer might have a comment on that too.
Yeah, just to add one thing, there is not a one-to-one correspondence between taking a course in person and having an in-person semifinal. There will be in-person courses that are set up in such a way, a writing seminar, for instance, where there might be no exams and you would not have an in-person semifinal. There might be online courses where you will be asked to take an in-person semifinal. So you can't simply look at your schedule once you have it and know what your testing situation is going to be. We're not only collecting information from faculty on whether they're going to be teaching in person or online, but we're also collecting information from faculty on whether they want to offer an in-person semifinal. So it'll be a bit of time before we know that. Thank you.
So we have a question that says, if I'm registered for an in-person class, but decide to continue the semester from home for safety reasons, will I be able to finish that class online?
Yes. So that's, again, this idea that we want to allow people to do the in-person classes online, right? So that's important for accessibility for students.
All right. Here's a question that I'd like someone to answer is, what advice do you have for transfer students worried about making social connections and engaging with professors' course material in their courses, if their courses are online?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a worry for a transfer student. I transferred colleges between my first and second years as an undergraduate. And it is harder when you're going into a new place. You have to learn the way things work there, get to meet new people. So it's always a challenge, and something we work on with our, any semester with our transfer students, for sure. With an online semester, I think there are some additional challenges because you don't have as many of those kind of interactions that would normally happen. But I would say definitely take advantage of the office hours. Virtual office hours are a great way to connect with your faculty. And as I mentioned, faculty finding that they can often find it more easy to interact with students using the virtual office hours. So I would really strongly encourage you to take advantage of that in terms of getting to know your faculty. For your fellow students, the interaction opportunities are going to be in smaller groups, but the small group is kind of what you want, right? That's where you've got your better opportunity to interact anyway. Your sophomore writing seminar with 15 people in it is where you actually get to know people a lot more than the 60 student labor employment law class where you're all scared of being called on by the scary professor kind of situation, right? That's you want to take advantage of those small seminars to get to know people.
I might also add that we have a first year and a transfer colloquium, and those are taught in small groups. And there's this a peer mentor who's tied to those courses who will help to create community and to create opportunities for folks to come together and discuss. And I know many of our new students are engaging on Chatter and learning about each other and asking questions. I'll ask Kevin to mention, looked like he had something to say, and maybe Anu has something to say about career programming. Kevin.
Sure, Kara, I was going to mention the colloquium, not only for transfer students, but first year students. You'll be part of a smaller group. It's a great place to start with interacting with other students and starting to build a bit of a community for yourself. It obviously is going to be a unique semester, so even more important to engage with this group of students coming in and having this experience, together. And the peer mentors are going to do the best they can to offer some engagement outside of the colloquium, as well as folks across the student experience team working with the peer mentors and other student groups to offer some programming that helps create some community. So we really want to make sure that you take advantage of that. We hope you do. We're going to do best we can to pull people together in various ways to make sure that we're starting to build a community here, offering that for you. And some of the other things that you can do right away before you even get here are take a look at the things that we've provided for you in our Canvas site and the information that we've invited you to take a look at to get a lay of the land for the school and how things work. I saw some questions about, overview of the curriculum. That's one of the best places you're going to find that if you get into the modules as we suggested and start to take a look at that information. Also how to, as I mentioned earlier, how to contact us and make connection with advisors across the team is in there. And we're ready for you. We welcome that. We're ready to welcome you and help you hit the ground running when you get here. So we hope you take advantage of all those things. But the colloquium was the one thing that I think is one of the best ways for you to start building some community and then branch out from there, because you're going to be able to branch out from there once you start to build relationships, not only with staff and faculty, but fellow students.
Kara, since you mentioned career services, I'll just mention, since there's such a variety of students on this webinar, because we have new students incoming classes, but also returning students, we will continue to stay in communication with our returning students as we always have. And we are available over the summer for advising, as you know how to do that through Chatter. The new students, both transfer and the first year class, we are partnering with Kevin's team in student services, and there will be a couple of upcoming sessions that are going to be offered in August. So, you don't need to be worried about all of that right now. Your priority really should be acclimating yourself to what is housing going to look like, what's dining looking like, what's the curriculum going to look like. And as you get onboarded, we will engage with you when the time is right. So no worries on the career side. But there were a few students returning that did ask, so I wanted to mention all career-related activities will be virtual, interviews, career fairs, all of that, and we will communicate that to you via email with more details in the coming weeks.
There were a few follow-up questions regarding the semifinals. So I wanted to kind of circle back to that really quickly before we run out of time. How will they be held? How will semifinal exams be held in person if the class is held online? And likewise, if a student is taking a course that has a semifinal, but they're remoting in, how will that work?
Those are good questions. I believe for the ones that are online, they're working on coming up with a way to schedule space for exam taking. I mean, that's something that we do on a regular basis anyway, where we, for finals, we schedule classes into different spaces, like, when you take an exam in Barton's or some other kind of location, right? So, so we are working on that. We are also going to have to have set up for people who are entirely remote online to be able to do the exams, right? So yeah, so that they are going to have to be able to do the exams online. I mean, obviously the example of the international students would be a good one of that. Though in some situations, I know there's a few of our students who are planning to do the study away option, which is where they're going to be based in campuses in other countries with other Cornell students, right? Which is I think a great option that we're going to have for a few of our students to do. And so there we may have setups with those universities for them to be able to write their exams more like students on the Cornell campus.
Thank you. Let's see here. I think we've hit many questions. There's probably a few that we have not hit, but here's one last final question, and then I'll make sure we tell folks how they can get more information. If a student has a cold and it is confirmed not to be COVID, can you still go to class, and will people freak out?
You can go to class. I cannot guarantee people won't freak out. I think the reality is now, anytime anybody coughs and maybe you just ate something that's going down the wrong way, but people will, that's a new reality that we live with. What we are trying to do is give you the assurance that everybody's being tested regularly, so that, if somebody's got the sniffles in your class, if it was COVID, they'll be getting a test, and you'll be able to get tests frequently and easily on campus, so that if you were to be sick with COVID, you can get treated right away, which is important. So we will all still get colds. So that's just kind of a reality of life. One thing I hope we're all going to do, though, is get our flu shot this year. Everything that the public health people are saying is it's really important that we get our flu shots. So I get those anyway. I've got small kids, or not so small anymore, I guess, but I have kids. So I always get my flu shots. But flu shots are particularly important this year to get, because you don't want to have COVID and the flu at the same time.
Yeah. Kids tend to be small, and then you blink and then they're not small anymore. So that tends to happen like that.
Yeah.
But the other piece of this is that all the online or in-person courses will be, you can access them remotely too. So when folks are feeling under the weather,
Yeah, and that's a good thing to do, right? If somebody's feeling under the weather, take advantage of that.
Yeah. So, I think we got to many of the questions. The team here is happy to answer more as you have them. So certainly be in touch. I want to remind folks that, some of the questions that came in were specific about the first year curriculum. We have a lot of new students joining us today. So please be sure we have a lot of information on our Canvas site that is meant to be an orientation for you to get more information about those things. And of course, the advising team will help you through that process as well. Some students asked about programming, and you can stay tuned for virtual programming that will happen in the fall and opportunities to connect. And I do want to remind folks that the COVID website is your place to get updated information. New information is posted daily, and FAQs will tell you if a new question is new there. So you can keep updated on that. And then there will be additional student meetings that the university will hold to provide more information specifically about some of the questions around move-in and quarantine and those sorts of things. So Dean Colvin, I don't know if you have any parting.
Well, even though it's going to be a strange semester, we're really looking forward to having you joining us. Looking forward to seeing you at the end of August, beginning of September time. We'll be kicking things off with a different orientation, but it's going to be a chance where we're all going to start coming together as a community, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. This is a great community, ILR and Cornell, and your students are what it's all about. So it's going to be great to be back together with you. I'm looking forward, by the way, to the first year and transfer students, the colloquium. That's something that is always a real pleasure for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing the new students there. So we'll see you soon.
Great. I'd like to thank all of my colleagues for joining us today. I'd like to thank you all for participating, and we do look forward to seeing you real soon as we get the fall semester underway. So take care.
Have a great rest of the summer, everybody.